World War I, the Great War. When you hear those words, maybe you picture muddy trenches, gas masks, the stuff in the history books. It feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? But what if I told you our sources for this deep dive show some really bizarre, brutal, and just mind-blowing facts about it? Things that textbooks often gloss over, but that actually changed your life today in ways you probably never imagined. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're not just giving you a history lesson here. We're on a quest for those surprising, overlooked insights. We've got some fascinating source material on the Great War, and today we're extracting the most important, most mind-bending facts. Kind of a shortcut, really, to being genuinely well-informed about this period that just reshaped everything.
Exactly. And that's why these details matter so much. We're going beyond the usual dates and battles. We want to explore the ripple effects, the unexpected innovations that came out of all that chaos. These aren't just trivia points. They show how a massive conflict can speed up change in how we tell time, in medicine, even setting up future events. Understanding these shifts helps you grasp the war's true legacy.
Okay, let's get into it. One of the most amazing things I read was that World War I literally changed how we tell time. My first reaction was, wait, how did that even work before? And why did the war make it such a big deal?
Well, it was pretty chaotic before the war, actually. Imagine this. Most towns, even in the same country, just use their own local solar time. Noon was when the sun was highest, wherever you were.
So different times in different towns.
Right. Now think about coordinating troop movements or artillery fire or even just trains carrying supplies across different regions. If everyone's on a slightly different clock, it's a logistical nightmare.
I see. For the military, that would be impossible.
Exactly. The sheer scale of WWI, massive armies, complex train schedules, needing synchronized attacks, it just made the old system completely unworkable. So while the idea of standard time zones wasn't brand new, the war's necessity forced countries to actually adopt them widely and quickly. It wasn't just borders that changed, it was the clocks on the wall. A really fundamental shift in daily life driven by military needs.
That's incredible. Something as basic as time. Okay, let's shift gears to something, well, much more somber, but equally impactful. The birth of modern plastic surgery. Our sources talk about the horrific facial injuries. Thousands of soldiers hit by shell blasts, shrapnel, unimaginable stuff. They were coming home disfigured on a scale never seen before, huge physical and psychological challenges. And then this figure, Harold Gillies, steps in. What was so special about his work?
It's a really stark example of how sometimes extreme suffering can drive incredible innovation, especially in medicine. Harold Gillies, he was a surgeon from New Zealand, and he was truly pioneering. He wasn't just patching wounds, he was developing entirely new ways to reconstruct faces, using skin grafts from other parts of the body, often in really complex multi-stage operations.
So inventing it as he went, almost.
Pretty much. He essentially created the foundations of what we now call plastic surgery, rebuilding jaws, noses, entire facial structures to help these men regain, well, some semblance of their former selves, and importantly, a chance to re-enter society. The techniques he came up with, born directly from the war's destruction, they're still the basis for reconstructive surgery today. Destruction leading to life-altering progress.
So the war reshaped time. It reshaped faces. Innovation in really unexpected areas.
Yeah.
But what about other players in this? One story from the sources that just blew me away was about the animals. It wasn't just humans fighting. Over 16 million animals served in World War I. 16 million. Horses, dogs, pigeons, camels, even elephants, apparently. Can you even wrap your head around that number?
It's staggering, isn't it?
And among them, one of the most famous was a carrier pigeon, Cherami. This bird was shot, badly wounded, but still delivered a message that saved almost 200 American soldiers. It's just unbelievable dedication.
It really is an incredible story. It highlights that deep bond between humans and animals, even in the worst possible conditions. And the fact that Cherami is actually preserved, stuffed, and on display in the Smithsonian Museum.
Really?
Yeah, not just as a curiosity, but as a recognized war hero. It really drives home the vital role these animals played. We focus a lot on the technology, the tanks, the planes, but animals provided transport, carried vital messages under fire, detected mines or gas. They offered comfort, too. They endured so much alongside the soldiers. Their contribution was massive, often overlooked. Makes you wonder about all the unsung heroes, animal and human.
Speaking of technology, let's talk tanks. That iconic image of WWI, right? The beginning of modern armored warfare. But the origin story is actually pretty strange, according to our sources. The British, when they were first developing them, kept it super secret. They called them water carriers to fool enemy spies.
Water carriers, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Tank was just the code name, kind of a simple disguise, and it just stuck. But those early ones, they weren't the sleek machines we might imagine. They were clunky, apparently incredibly slow, and so hot inside the crews would just pass out.
Oh, absolutely. Conditions were atrocious.
So were they seen as a game changer immediately? Or was there, debate about whether these strange metal beasts were actually useful?
Oh, there was definitely debate. You have to remember the context. The Western Front was this horrific stalemate. Miles of trenches, barbed wire, machine guns. Neither side could break through without massive casualties. So these early tanks, even with all their problems breaking down, getting stuck, being slow, they represented a desperate hope. A way to cross no man's land and break the deadlock. Many military leaders were skeptical, thought they were too vulnerable or unreliable.
But they needed something.
Exactly, they needed something new. And eventually, despite the rough start, tanks proved crucial in breaking that trench warfare stalemate. It's a classic example of military innovation born out of pure desperation, trying anything to overcome an impossible situation. Lots of trial and error.
It wasn't just big machines, though. The war innovated in subtler ways, too, even with, snack food. This detail surprised me. The U.S. Army actually gave soldiers Hershey's chocolate bars and even Coca-Cola as morale boosters.
Ah, the taste of home.
Right. That wasn't just casual. The government apparently partnered with these companies to mass produce them specifically for the troops. That feels like an early form of, military marketing.
It's a fascinating point. It really touches on the psychological side of warfare, doesn't it? Recognizing soldier well-being. It was definitely an early and pretty smart collaboration. Think about the conditions: brutal, terrifying, often boring. A simple chocolate bar, a familiar soda. That could be a huge psychological lift, a small comfort, a moment of normalcy. In a way, you could argue these simple snacks were also weapons of war because they helped sustain morale, kept the soldiers going. It shows how total the war effort became.
Okay, let's tackle a big misconception. When you think WWI, you probably picture France, Belgium, those European trenches. But the sources make it clear. This was truly a world war, not just European. Fighting happened in Africa, across the Middle East, in parts of Asia, even the Pacific Islands. That really broadens the picture.
It absolutely does. And it's so important to remember that global dimension, which often gets downplayed. Millions of soldiers came from colonies, India, parts of Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, even China sent labor corps.
Wow. Millions.
Millions. Many fought and died far from home, often without the recognition they deserved back then or even now in some histories. Their involvement really underlines that this was the first truly global conflict. And it had huge long-term consequences, changing colonial relationships, planting seeds for independence movements later on. It shows how interconnected the world already was over a century ago.
And the human cost wasn't just physical. Let's talk about shell shock. During the war, thousands of soldiers started showing these really disturbing symptoms. Uncontrollable tremors, nightmares, breakdowns. Doctors at the time were often baffled. Sometimes they dismissed it as cowardice, right?
Yeah.
It must have been awful for the soldiers.
It was terrible, but the sheer number of cases forced the medical world to confront it. What they called shell shock then, we now understand as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
It's a severe mental health condition triggered by trauma. The war, with its constant bombardment and horror, was a massive trigger. While the initial understanding was poor and the treatment often harsh, WWI essentially forced doctors and psychologists to take the mental impact of combat seriously for the first time on such a scale. It was a dark beginning, but it led, eventually, to much better understanding and care for trauma survivors, both military and civilian, a tragic catalyst for progress in mental health.
The war was also just full of extremes. The sources point this out really clearly. You had the shortest battle, the Battle of Mons, apparently lasted just a few hours early in the war.
A brief, sharp shock.
Exactly. And then you contrast that with the longest trench battle, Verdun. 10 months. 10 months of grinding, brutal fighting, over 700,000 casualties, just unimaginable hell. How could one war contain such completely different realities?
It's sobering, isn't it? Mons was early, chaotic. Verdun became this symbol of pointless, attritional warfare, a meat grinder. It highlights that World War I wasn't one single experience. Every front, every battle, even different sectors of the same trench line had its own pace, its own horrors, its own kind of endurance test. It reminds you that behind the grand narrative, war is millions of individual struggles, varying wildly in their intensity and duration.
Okay, here's one that's genuinely eerie. The link between the end of WWI and the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. Our sources explain that as troops started heading home, millions of them all over the world, they carried the virus with them. So the end of the war actually helps spread this other catastrophe. That's a terrible irony.
It is, and it raises this crucial point about how large-scale events, especially massive movements of people, can amplify other crises. Think about it. Millions of soldiers demobilizing, traveling across continents, often in crowded conditions, weakened by war. It was the perfect storm for a pandemic.
Yeah, you can see how that would happen.
And the numbers are just devastating. The Spanish flu killed over 50 million people worldwide in about a year, far more than died in the actual fighting during the 4 years of war.
50 million.
It's staggering. It shows the war didn't just stop suffering when the guns fell silent. It created the conditions for a different kind of catastrophe, highlighting the link between conflict, global health, and movement, a lesson still relevant today.
And that brings us to the end, and maybe the most poignant point. World War I was called famously the war to end all wars. That was the hope, right? That it was so terrible, humanity would just say, never again.
A powerful sentiment.
But then, just 2 decades later, World War II kicks off. It makes that original name seem incredibly naive, almost heartbreakingly ironic.
And that's perhaps the most vital lesson here. Why didn't it end all wars? The sources point directly to the peace settlement, the Treaty of Versailles. It was incredibly harsh, especially on Germany. It imposed huge reparations, territorial losses, war guilt. It created deep resentment, economic hardship, and fueled extreme nationalism.
So the peace treaty itself sowed the seeds for the next war.
Exactly. Instead of fostering real reconciliation, it created the perfect breeding ground for future conflict. It teaches us that peace isn't just the absence of fighting. Unless it's made with wisdom, with fairness, looking towards genuine reconciliation, you might just be setting the stage for the next war. History isn't just separate events, it's a chain reaction.
So, wrapping this up, World War I. It's not just distant history, it's like a mirror, isn't it? Reflecting both incredible human ingenuity, changing time, inventing plastic surgery, and also just unimaginable brutality and flawed peacemaking. Its effects are woven into our world today in ways we rarely notice.
Absolutely. And maybe that leaves you with a question to think about. How are the hidden details, the unintended consequences of big historical events like WWI still subtly shaping our world right now? From the way we sync our clocks to how we think about global pandemics or the conditions for lasting peace, are we really paying attention to those deeper connections, those hidden truths shaping our present?
We hope this deep dive gave you some surprising insights. Which facts stood out most to you? Definitely keep exploring history. There's always more to uncover.